Okay, Brian, welcome back to the feature match area. Brian, what are we looking for here as far as how things might play out in game one in our best 2 out of 3 match set here?
So the dynamic of this matchup has a lot to do with, as you mentioned, the 4-cost enchantments, obviously kind of the namesake cards of these decks, Fires of Invention, Wilderness Reclamation. But Autumn is going to be looking to ramp out and play, say, Growth Spiral, Titans of Nature's Wrath, in order to build up their mana and get to the point that Wilderness Reclamation is kind of a haymaker, or can just play out Hydroid Krasis that are building up their resources and putting on a lot of pressure on Nassif. Nassif, on the other hand, is looking to get out Fires of Invention and just play stuff. Once you get Fires of Invention online, that's your mana ramp, right? You're getting to discount everything that you do to 0, and crucially, Nassif has some cards in the deck that end up making things really difficult for Autumn. Teferi Time Raveler, we have seen, really turns off Wilderness Reclamation effectively entirely, because outside of your main phase, you're not casting spells. So it doesn't matter if you get all that extra mana during your end step.
Take a look at the opener here for Autumn. They've got 3-lander with an Opt, a Krasis, and a pair of Wilderness Reclamation. Sure. It's got some of the more powerful cards, but this hand on its own doesn't really do that much. The Wilderness Reclamations don't interact with Hydroid Krasis in a way that's profitable, and the Optus has kind of a lot of pressure leaning on it right now.
Yeah, this is a kind of marginal hand, I would say. You really would prefer to have a ramp effect along with this, but the combination of Opt and Temple of Abandon gives you quite a bit more looks at your deck. So you have additional selection that can find you those additional linchpins to go alongside your Wilderness Reclamations, which alongside just having your correct colored mana is pretty crucial.
Interesting draw here for Autumn. They found Storm's Wrath, which is one way that you can combat large swarms of creatures. In this case, though, it's actually going to be more effective at dealing with planeswalkers. But of course, the critical question is, Gabriel knows this. Does he play around it? And the answer will be yeah.
One bit of sequencing here that's actually pretty important is that Autumn chose to play their island into Opt, just main phase. A lot of times people, they're like, Opt's an instant, I'm going to wait on it. But if you're planning on playing a scry land in the same turn, you want to get the value out of the scry. So you don't want to scry and then be like, oh, well, now I already know the card on top. I'm not going to Opt and do that. So that's just good sequencing, because there's no reason to really play that as an instant.
First big decision point here for Autumn. They can decide to play Breeding Pool untapped, which would give them access to Brazen Borrower, or play a Temple of Epiphany tapped, which means that they for sure get to cast Wilderness Reclamation next turn. And it looks like Wilderness Rec, or at least the option for it, is the priority.
Right now, the Brazen Borrower is not really threatening anything. Most of the time, you're going to want to save Brazen Borrower to, say, bounce Fires Invention, bounce Teferi, something that's a problem.
And we just see a beatdown draw here from Nassif. As you see, he hasn't done anything super powerful, but there is a harbinger of things to come, because both players on turn 4 here are going to get their powerful enchantments down. And that's better news for Nassif than it is for Burchett, right? The Fires of Invention hits now.
It does it. There's a passive intervention, right? So there's the fact that Wilderness Reclamation is essentially free means that Autumn has the option of playing the fastest intervention here and just stopping it from coming down entirely. They can also let it resolve, and then say a Sphinx of Foresight comes down. They have the option of actually just Storm's Wrath away the board. Anything that comes down this turn alongside the Fires is going to die to that Storm's Wrath anyway.
That's right. And then Autumn will still have access to Thassa's Intervention on Nassif's turn. So things lining up nicely for Autumn thus far. Nassif in the tank. He only has 2 options here. He can cast the Sphinx of Foresight or the Bone Crusher Giant.
I have to imagine that's the plan here, is to just fire off the Storm Breath now. There could be just Thassa's Intervention to dig. Brazen Borrower. The plan could be that they just want to ensure that they are able to get the selection from that intervention later.
Yeah,
the problem here, though.
Also, can't you just Storm's Wrath in this Thassa's Intervention the Fires?
Yes. Yeah. You can definitely do that as well. Ooh,
I don't know if it's good, but it's an option.
There's sort of the question of why play it this way, which I think part of it may be that you're planning on just tying up Nassif's mana over multiple turns, replaying.
Rather than just countering the Fires up front. So let's see if that's the plan here for Autumn. They're thinking about it.
There's still the option of Thassa's Intervention for. I guess this is not a blue card anyway. We saw Autumn actually make the play of Thassa's Intervention, digging for counter magic at a previous matchup. when they had access to Mystical Dispute and such. But here, just going to stop the fires entirely.
So this two-turn sequence for Autumn leaves Gabriel Nassif with nothing doing, just plays the land and passes the turn back.
And
a
here's
second copy of Wilderness Wreck with an expansion explosion in hand could be devastating.
Yep, this is going to be a big burst of resources for Autumn here.
Autumn has set this up beautifully. Nassif completely tapped out, no relevant permanents on the battlefield. The full green light here for Burchett to just fire off an explosion. Now, this is where things get interesting. Do you go for the full amount, or do you leave yourself some mana to perhaps cast an interactive spell, a Brazen Borrower at the minimum? But let's talk about some of the things that Autumn might be able to find with Explosion.
I mean, there is Thassa's Intervention, which would only be essentially a Mana Leak Power Sink effect for 2. It looks like they're just going for 4 here, which does leave up the possibility of at least, as you mentioned, the Brazen Borrower, or possibly going to spiral into something.
So does this backfire a little bit? Right. Like, so there's an argument to be said to say just go huge, leave the shields down. You'll be able to figure it out in your turn. But Autumn taking the middle route and finds land, Storm's Wrath.
Yeah, and now they do have a Hydroid Crisis available, right? So there's still the ability to dig, but that is not something that's powered up by Wilderness Reclamation. And I'm curious if the thought process here was, well, I want to give myself the best chance of being able to answer, say, another copy of Fires Invention into something, and at least Brazen Borrower can chump block, but there's not actually even Cavalier of Gales in Nassif's deck, so there aren't flyers that this would be blocking if they were like a Cavalier of Flame / Cavalier of Gales type of turn.
So Nassif says, well, I'm just going to cast Cavalier of Flame then, and discard at least 2 lands plus a Bone Crusher Giant. Looks like 3 cards going away. Nassif wants to find some action.
Crackling Flames, just gonna...
I like the sound effect, yeah. It's
just rope as long as possible, just like a Pyromaniac.
All right, and Nassif ended up finding land, Teferi, Time Raveler. Here we see Brazen Borrower hit the battlefield. That could be relevant against that
That's
Teferi.
just another land.
Wow. So we're going to see a Crisis for 4, so a couple of cards into hand. Not bad, but this is not the devastating sort of take over the game. And there's 2 more lands off the top for Autumn.
I mean, this is a really big deal. The fact that Autumn needed to play the untapped land this turn in order to actually get the Crisis for 4 for the extra cards means there's no additional scry. So, I mean, there's entirely the possibility that Autumn just bricks out. Teferi's coming down. That means that suddenly the Wilderness Reclamations aren't really effective at all. And Cavalier of Flame is already online, already on the board and threatening their life total.
Nassif is down to 11 life, 7 power in the air for Autumn.
I know my responsibility.
Nassif choosing to cast Teferi, Time Raveler here. He also has access to Bone Crusher Giant or Stomp. Burchett does not look amused with his whole flooding out situation at all.
And I wonder if part of the thought process to keeping the mana open was to ensure that you at least have Brazen Borrower to fight back against the Teferi that might come down in order to keep your Wilderness Reclamations online. But now the fact that Autumn isn't 3 cards deeper in their deck is really coming back to punish them. Ooh.
And look at this from Nassif. Minus Teferi targeting, dun-dun-dun, your Hydroid.
That is not a play you see very often.
No.
So
this is going to be, I'm assuming, there we go, Bone Crusher Giant, a.k.a. Stomp, to kill the only remaining creature, clear the way for a big attack. And Nassif is playing some kind of a tempo game now where he's trying to say, go ahead, cast your Hydroid Crisis again, tap out, I dare ya.
So Growth Spiral, not really very effective
either.
Here. You can't even use it with the Reclamation mana floating thanks to the Teferi. And there is still the possibility of playing out the Hydroid Crisis for 5 or for 4 and play Temple of Mystery going to dig a little bit deeper.
And you can see the line here from Nassif. It's a beautiful thing. Bone Crusher Giant sitting on an adventure. Cast that for 3, play a land, have 2, 4, 5 extra mana, so 2 activations of Cavalier of Flame. If you -3 from that, though, you can cast another Teferi to get rid of the Hydroid Crisis.
One of the really important
Had a
questions
huge
here is
board.
how many lands are in Nassif's graveyard? Because if Nassif's graveyard is full of enough lands, the hasted Bone Crusher Giant plus the trigger from Cavalier could actually end up just being lethal.
Yeah, it looks like it's very close to lethal from this perspective.
That's another one with the Fabled Passage.
And once again, Autumn just cannot seem to find any relevant action. Another Storm's Wrath and a Steam Vents. Does Nassif has this?
I'll protect
Plus Teferi Time Raveler.
Yeah,
This is looking like good game here.
This is actually just Teferi Bouncer Crisis into Bone Crusher Giant haste kill.
Activate, kill you.
I am not this.
Nassif playing the most dangerous game, tempo game against Hydroid Crisis. Return it to your hand. Go ahead, cast it again for 5. See if I care. But look at this. Autumn sitting on 9 and scheduled to take 12, and that is game number 1.
Wow.
Going to Gabriel Nassif.
And that, given the way that that game played out, Autumn had Reclamation, and a window to fire off Explosion that Nassif couldn't interact with. They chose to fire it off for just 4, keeping the 3 mana up for Brazen Borrower. That Brazen Borrower ended up not really having a meaningful impact on the game. If they had perhaps drawn Growth Spiral, maybe there could have been a payoff there, but not having those additional cards, given just how land-heavy those draws were, ended up punishing Autumn severely.
Yeah, that is the risk that you take when you say, okay, I'm giving myself a backup plan with this Brazen Borrower. If I don't hit anything, I know I can at least use that mana. But really, you're hoping for something interactive, right? You're hoping for some way to stop your opponent from doing what they're doing while you move your game plan forward. It just backfired.
It did. It is worth noting, now that we are in these lower semifinals, I believe that's what it's called. I'm trying to remember exactly the terminology we're working with here. Lower bracket. Lower round 1, I've just been told, is the official name for this. It's right in the screen there. I should have just read that. Now that we're in lower round 1, these are now best of 3 matches, not just best of 3 games. So Nassif has the game 1 win in this first match, but even one more win will not mean that he advances. I do want to point out, Nassif got the hat on.
Got the hat on. Chat's gonna be happy.
He saw Autumn. Well, they're working with the hat. They got it going on. Okay.
We have a proper
Yellow hat time.
duel.
It
don't we?
is.
Yeah.
Is this hat from Autumn? Is this like a Knicks hat?
It's
It's kind of like a Starfield right
It
there.
has to be a Starfield Knicks hat. Autumn is playing a deck built around an enchantment. It all fits together. It's all on brand. It's all on theme. By the way, we're watching Nassif finish up sideboarding there. And let's get into game number 2. As you just mentioned, Kibler, even with the win here for Nassif, we're not done in this round between these two. So everybody take a deep breath. Perhaps most of all, Autumn Burchett. That game did not go the way that they wanted. Now what do you do with this? Lots of ways to get cards onto the battlefield, including lands. Must be a keep.
Yeah, no copy of Wilderness Reclamation this time, but does have double ramp, which is very important, along with Omen of the Sea, which can help smooth the rest of the draw out. But as we saw last game, the pressure that the Fires deck is able to generate is very meaningful. That damage adds up very quickly, and you can just end up getting hasted down from even what seemed like reasonably high life totals.
Right. Nassif does have Sphinx of Foresight. He's going to reveal that on pregame actions. At the beginning of his first upkeep, he'll get to scry 3. Sphinx of Foresight, a critical addition to this deck. It's been around for a while now, but it really is what put the Fires deck to the build that you see today, was the addition of Sphinx of Foresight. It added not only the ability to smooth out draws in the way that you see here from Nassif with this scry, but it also gave you something to do on turn 4 when you cast the Fires of Invention and you have a bunch of 5s in your hand. Being able to cast that Sphinx of Foresight as well proved very powerful.
Robber of the Rich is coming down. Won't get to rob anything, though. Growth Spiral puts land in play.
5 cards apiece for both of our players. In order for Robber of the Rich to trigger, the person you're attacking has to have more cards in hand than you do. Only robs from rich people. But still gets to get in for 2 with haste. Down to 18 goes Burchett. And what are they going to do now? Well, nothing for the moment, but this could be a growth spiral, or an Omen of the Sea growth spiral turn, depending on how things play out. I suppose it could even be all of them.
And this is where things get tricky, because now we're in the sideboard games, which does mean that Autumn has access to Mystical Dispute and Negate, as well as Nightpack Ambush. There's just a lot of ways that this deck can operate very differently than it does in game number 1. So Nassif has to be calculating a lot of possible plays for Autumn here, as you know, it's not just a matter of, oh, just slam your Teferi, which in game 1, essentially your Teferi goes uncontested in the early turns.
All right, here comes Teferi Time Raveler. Currently no answer for Autumn, and they really gave a head shake there. That is not what Autumn wanted to see. This is also going to force the issue. Autumn now needs to decide what combination of growth spirals and or Omen of the Sea, or all of them, if a couple of lands are hit here, are they going to play?
I think the Omen here first makes a lot of sense, because you're trying to ensure that you actually find something that does something.
Right. But unfortunately for Autumn,
okay.
Maybe I spoke a little too soon. There is a Fry with that last card, and that is going to do something here. That's a good answer for Teferi. So does Nassif get his card out of Teferi now, or does he plus? Plus does not play around Fry. It does play around Storm's Wrath, however. But he did. He plussed, and now that worked out pretty well for Autumn, all told. The Fry.
The art of Fry is very funny.
It is really funny.
As a cyber card, they didn't see a lot of play since Oko went to 6. But nowadays, those little scorched feet, you know, are...
You do see them fairly often. Once again, we're going to see Autumn pass the turn after casting Fry to take care of Teferi, and another Teferi off the top here for Nassif. Bingo, just what he wanted. Now this is Autumn saying, come on, just once. Give me that sideboard sweetness.
Okay, well, that's sweetness. It's not sideboard, but Hydroid Krasis with just so many land. The life paid there is to get the Scry off Omen of the Sea. The 2 damage, Autumn considering not that big a deal, but being able to set up their next couple of draws, very powerful.
And once again, this Robber of the Rich continues to chip away.
And that damage adds up. It's only 2 at a time, but already down to 12 life. And as we saw last game, thanks to the haste off of Cavalier Flame, I can do a lot of damage all at once.
There's that Mystical Dispute that Autumn was hoping to hit before. It looks like they're going to keep Breeding Pool on top.
And
this allows a Krasis for 6.
Yep, big Krasis time.
Boom.
And not quite as much pressure as last game for Nassif, so I don't think we'll see this Krasis as likely to get bounced.
Yeah, it's a little tough to try to win off of Robber of the Rich rather than Cavalier of Flame.
Although now Autumn's pretty rich. You know, the Robber could, can attack in. You can try to get another card as long as you do possibly commit to bouncing this, but that's a lot to ask.
Oh boy. Also, with only 4 mana, a land drop available still for Nassif, you can't even set up a situation where you can play the Sphinx plus get rid of the Robber without using Teferi. Ooh, I'm really curious to see where Nassif goes with this. He has a lot of options. He has Brazen Borrower as well. Although it does appear that he can only cast 1/2 of the Borrower with only 2 blue mana sources.
Looks like he's going to look at what other options might be there with the Omen of the Sea. Fire's Invention to the top.
Sea Ordain is what they call that card.
I have not heard that before.
Yep.
That's not bad.
It's not bad, right? Scry 2, draw a card. Very powerful way to dig through your library. Both players playing this card in Standard. 1 top, 1 bottom, and as you mentioned, Brian, it is Fires of Invention. Now, right now, Nassif doesn't have the big hammer to drop. He has a Sphinx of Foresight for next turn if he wants to cast the Fires, but, we're not talking about Cavaliers just yet.
It's an interesting spot because, Teferi, do you want to say bounce your Omen of the Sea and actually and replay it. You know, do you want to bounce the Hydro Crisis and try and get a card off the Rob or the Rich?
It is going to be Brazen Bar. We're sending it packing and get a card off the Robber. That's right.
This is specifically, Nassif is trying to protect Teferi.
Right. This is not like last time where Nassif necessarily has like a win set up. And here's an opt now as well. And I think that was Autumn's opt, right?
Yes. The stolen opt.
Wow, with the 1 extra mana.
Perfect.
Pretty nice for Nassif. Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath was the draw there for Autumn. Is it just Krasis again?
The Krasis is just very well insulated against the Teferi, at least giving you some amount of value here. You know, if you do play Uro, very likely just going to get bounced. Hydroid Krasis, if it gets bounced, you're at least drawing 3 more cards, gaining some life.
Okay, more of the same. Another Storm's Wrath.
Actually,
Uro.
no land.
Interesting. And a Mystical Dispute as well. So the shields are well and truly down for Autumn Burchett. They pass the turn back to Nassif.
That Cavalier Flame is a really important draw because that is the real crux to being able to get a
that was so huge.
Explosive, aggressive attack.
Now he can start using Teferi Time Raveler the same way we saw him use it in the last game.
Yep, gonna go back.
Wow, what a draw for Gabriel Nassif finding Cavalier of Flame. Look, he already had a decent turn set up with Fires of Invention, maybe into the Sphinx or something, but none of that was going to deal long-term with this Krasis plan that Autumn has put into place. But Cavalier of Flame says, I do have a game plan here.
And crucially, the Cavalier can go digging for the additional land.
To try to get this haste right now.
And that's exactly what Nassif's trying to do.
He sent all of his cards away, and he actually missed.
Well, he didn't draw an untapped land, and he also drew 2 copies of Mystical Dispute with Fires already in play.
Right.
So he can't even use those on Autumn's turn.
Bricks. Another land off the top for Autumn.
Can Autumn double Storm's Wrath here?
Only
no,
two
only 2 red mana.
Oh. So one of them would kill Robber of the Rich. It would also kill Teferi.
But it
might be worth it.
You can Storm's Wrath and Uro, which at least gets in the way.
Now, are we talking about casting Uro from Escape? Or, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a great turn for Autumn as well. Oh, boy. The gloves are off now here in game number 2. The big hitters are coming down. Cavalier of Flame, Uro.
There seems to be the option to expansion a Storm's Wrath, but you can't do that with Teferi in play. You can't respond even to your own Storm's Wrath with expansion, so that's not an option.
But that Storm's Wrath did good work getting rid of that Robber of the Rich and Teferi at the same time. Now this is get interesting though, because now we have Nassif with Fires of Invention and Cavalier of Flame in hand and on the battlefield.
And the life gain from this Uro is also huge.
Massive.
Nassif is in a position where he is going to have to rush Autumn down because Autumn just has clearly so many resources here.
So this is getting interesting. Nassif does have the ability to cast Brazen Borrower.
Oh, is this actually just lethal now?
Then cast Cavalier of Flame.
Not with the Brazen, because the Brazen Borrower is already on an adventure.
Right. But he can cast it and get it in the air.
A second Cavalier.
Oh boy, is that it?
The second Cavalier, I think, is actually just lethal.
So that's 2
Cavaliers,
sixes,
2 activations.
8, 16. That's exactly
lethal.
enough. A third Cavalier of Flame for Gabriel Nassif.
And look at the shake of the head from Autumn.
All in the same turn. What are you supposed to do if you're in Autumn's seat? Unbelievable. Nassif aggressively digging through his library to find the win here. No matter how the blocks go, 1 more activation on the Cavaliers means 16 damage. And game number 2 and the match going to Gabriel Nassif. We are playing best 2 out of 3 matches as a reminder, but that's a very big check mark there for Nassif, who picks up match number 1.
Yeah, in the Battle of the Hats, it seems yellow. Yellow is the trump card there. Oh, he's taking it off, though.
Oh, no. Oh, he's going to take a quick breather, I think. That's okay. Autumn has a sip of water, and a deep breath absolutely needed for our players, no doubt about it, as these ones are getting very, very intense, not just for us in the booth and for you at home, but of course for our players as well, who are feeling it more than anybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly high-pressure tournament overall. this match alone, these players have already, of course, come very far, making it to the top 8 of the World Championship.
Yeah.
But every match win is worth so much, not only in terms of just money you win, right?
Yeah.
But also just in terms of you are still alive to be the world champion.
Yes, and that is such a huge deal down the stretch here on day number 2. We're really happy you decided to come along and hang out with us, watch some high-level Magic, and as you can tell, that intensity is getting turned up match after match as we work our way through. Now, another quick reminder here, that is not done. That was not Nassif advancing, moving on. Nothing happened there. That was one match. Now, Nassif needs to win one of the next 2 matches to take this thing down and advance on. That, of course, means the pressure is on Autumn. They have to fight, and win back-to-back matches in what looked like a fairly even matchup from what we saw. I like Nassif's side a little more because of the Teferis.
Yeah, I feel like those games, things just very narrowly went Nassif's way, right? Like drawing the 3rd Cavalier. I believe he could have drawn another untapped land in order to actually get lethal with the Borrower they had on Adventure as well. But like, he had the tools he needed. He had the Cavalier Flames, he had the Fires and everything. And in both games, Autumn had, just not quite enough to stay alive. And I do think that, Autumn may be thinking back to that, the explosion in game number 1, and it's like, okay, maybe should I have done this differently?
Possibly.
Yeah, because it looked like it was in their favor tremendously, and then just slipped away.
That's right. Well, the players are taking a breather. We're going to take a breather. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more right after this. Jensen trying to break through here. And he's got 1 game to go. Now, if I'm sitting in Javier Dominguez's seat, Luis, I want to know, do you feel a relief of pressure or more pressure? Back to Jensen, and now the fireworks start. He gets to start casting his 3-mana spells.
And Javier's in a spot where he has to take a damage every time he casts a spell. That's a really tough emblem to win under, because his 2 Round-Up Runes are his only red sources currently. But the messed up part for him is he doesn't really want to draw a mountain. He doesn't need more lands.
Right.
His hand is the backup legendary Karizev and a Rampaging Frostodon alongside an Abrade.
Not the worst draw, as now he only takes 1 damage
Right.
whenever he activates the Ramunap Ruins. And William Jensen is 3 activations away from death here.
Jensen impressed by the mountain there from Javier Dominguez.
Nice card.
Yeah. Another land off the top for William Jensen.
And these are the big turns, though, where Jensen really needs to draw a way to finish the game, or the Ramunap Ruins will eventually tick down William's life total.
Yeah, he needs to find a way to pressure Dominguez, but he can't really.
And this is one of the huge strengths of the Ramunap red deck. Javier Dominguez drew 7 lands, but those lands could just end the game.
Longtusk Cub is going to attack. Jensen recognizing the need to start attacking. He's going to cash in 2 of his energy to make sure that Karizev dies. And Dominguez says, okay, well, this is clearly a race at this point. My lands versus your creatures. I'm going to start throwing away creatures to preserve my life total. As William Jensen falls down to 4, Dominguez falls down to 9, and he has a pair of Karizevs in hand. Another reason why he didn't mind blocking there. Okay, so Jensen ships in with every available tacker. And now Javier Dominguez has to decide if he wants to chump block the Longtusk Cub, or if he wants to block the Whirler, he goes down to 1 and then cannot use.
Okay, so Javier
his
Dominguez
Ramunap Ruins.
just needs to draw a land here.
He's all in on it being a mountain.
He needs
has
to draw
find a land.
Sunscorched Desert, Mountain, Shock, Lightning Strike, Chandra, so many outs.
1 to 4.
1 to 4, and here we go. Does Javier Dominguez find what he needs? Look at Jensen just shakes his head.
Oh man!
He showed him the
Dominguez,
Karizevs. He's like, look, I don't have it right now.
Giving us the big sweat. Let's see what he finds.
Flip it up. Oh, what is it?
Oh, that is not the sound of somebody who hit.
Oh,
what did he find? Another Rampaging Ferocodon, perhaps?
Chandra's defeat.
Chandra's defeat out of the sideboard. It's not in, and Huey Jensen is your world champion. Congratulations to Jensen. He started playing Magic in 7th grade, and after that long journey, he is now your world champion.
Welcome back to coverage of World Championship 26 powered by Alienware. What's up, everybody? I'm Maria Bertoldi. I've got Day 9 and Paul Chian out here with me in beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, watching these matches that are Oh, so very important. Takeaways there. What a big end to the game.
You know, I want to come back again to Autumn's interview comment about how Jeskai Fires initially feels like it has an advantage. And I mean, ignoring any further analysis, those games show why. I mean, you just get a little bit of presence on the board, and all of a sudden the Cavalier turns that single creature into a 7-1 or a 10-6 or whatever it is, and you explode instantly.
The thing that I really want to talk about is just kind of Nassif going with lines that are kind of counterintuitive at times. Whoever wants to bounce a 6/6 Hydroid creates this, but Nassif realizing that the way that he wins is by utilizing the tempo advantage that he got from the various bounce effects in his deck, the Brazen Bower and the Teferi, to put himself in a position to attack for lethal through those Cavaliers and those Kenriths. He played that game beautifully. You know, Autumn was basically tapping out every single turn, playing a spell didn't matter because Nassif was like, okay, this is how I'm going to win. I am way low on resources. I mean, Autumn's up 5, 6, 7 cards, but you know what? I'm going to bounce your creature and I'm going to kill you for lethal in one big swing, and that's why he won. He found the line, and that's not something that you would expect from everybody, but of course, from Gabriel Nassif, you know, one of the best players of all time, not too surprising.
Yeah, the World Championship, a great place to get tips at home if you want to improve your game. And I'm sure like all of you out there are thinking about that right now. How do I get to become a better player? And none better than Gabriel Nassif to watch and get some of those tips. Why don't we take a look at our bracket so far so we can see where we are and who's playing here on what's happened earlier today and where we have yet to go later to this afternoon. Take a look. Here we go. Marcio Carvalho and Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa earlier today locked up their spots in the top 4. They will be playing the upper finals tomorrow. So that'll happen tomorrow. Keep your eyes out for that. We are now down in the lowers. You can see the match we just saw, Gabriel Nassif, Autumn Burchett, but keep in mind, it is best 2 out of 3 matches. In the lower, Sebastian Pazzo, Jean-Emmanuel Duprat as well, poised to go up against Seth Manfield and Eli Loveman, the winners of those matches. So tell me a little bit about 2 out of 3 matches. That's a lot of Magic and potentially a lot of games, Paul. Is that just like a strain on you mentally as well as playing at the highest level of competition?
Well, the thing is, a lot of these players are used to playing, you know, tournaments where you play 10, 12 rounds or 15 rounds over the course of 2 days. So I think for them, you know, they just have to kind of reset and just know that they have to continue playing matches of Magic. I think with Autumn, they came really close to winning game 1. I mean, they cast a huge explosion and just kind of drew a bunch of lands in a row. So I think they have to think, look, this matchup is still good. Nassif had to take some unconventional lines to get there, but you know they still have to be feeling pretty good about this matchup.
Okay, so match 1 going to Gabriel Nassif, but like we said, best 2 out of 3. We might have 2 more to play, so let's send it back to the booth.
And welcome back to the booth here. That's Brian Kibler. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. Thanks so much for coming along. We got match number 2 coming up. This is best 2 out of 3 matches. If you're just joining us, we just watched the first match, but this is kind of a grouping here. In order to advance and knock your opponent out, you're going to have to win 2 matches, not games. Gabriel Nassif, 1 to the good there. Let's see how match number 2 goes right now. And as Paul just said over on the analyst desk, you know, this is a time where a deep breath, center yourself, play a match of Magic is the order of the day because the pressure has well and truly mounted. It's all on the line between these players. This is survival mode. You advance and things are so good for you. You're moving up the standings, you're putting yourself in better position for top 4, etc. You lose, you're done.
Yeah, it's a absolutely huge match for both these players, or matches, as the case may be. As you know, there are still possibly 2 more matches between these 2 to go. And one of the interesting things about playing matches of Magic, especially, you know, many matches over the course of the years have been, you know, best of say 5. We haven't done that many best of X matches. And one of the things that you have in you know best of series is adaptations, right? Mm-hmm. You begin to notice either, you know, maybe ways your opponent seems to sideboard, and that you can sometimes prepare for, at least theoretically, what your opponent's going to sideboard by knowing their deck list, but sometimes they don't necessarily sideboard or play the games in the way that you anticipate, and being able to adjust to how your opponent comes at the match can be very valuable in these kind of matches.
Here's the opening hand now. Oh, this actually looks like, is this a mulligan already, or is this the opening 7? This looks like 7.
This is an opening 7.
Keep 7. Okay, keep 7 says Autumn as they look to the sky and say, Just the
So
one.
many scries.
Wow. Scry 3
So little
twice.
time.
It is not the same as Scry 6, but it's right up there. And just if you're just tuning in, we did just see the first match of this 3-match or 2-match set, depending on how things go, between Gabriel Nassif and Autumn Burchett. That was Gabriel winning that first match. You see the dot under his camera there. That signifies that he's won to the good. These do reset.
Yep.
So we are back to a game 1. There's no sideboard here. It's just another match of Magic like any other.
We see. I was actually going to make a joke about whether Nassif would rope before his turn begins, but it's just happening.
It's literally
It's actually just happening. And this is still the first scry.
It's true.
There's another one
We
coming.
do have another to go, and he bottomed all 3. So this is wow. 6 cards go to the
All
bottom.
right.
Boy, I wonder what that was. 6 cards to the bottom. Nassif has 3 lands in hand plus 1 on the battlefield. They must have just all been lands.
I mean, it's possible that he's just looking for fires, right? With
Yes.
his hand of double Sphinx of Foresight, fires is by far the best thing that you're going to be able to find.
And he just like to go 6
And
cards deeper.
it's possible.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I don't have fires in these 6 cards. I want fires.
Makes sense.
Or Teferi, right? Like the key cards. I would say that in this matchup, fires and Teferi are really your keys. And if you don't see any of those, and you already have mana and some number of threats, I think that's what you're looking for.
Get rid of 10% of your library to the bottom and keep digging. Here's Temple of Mystery now for Burchett, who has a pair of Brazen Borrowers, a Storm's Wrath, Hydroid Crisis, Omen of the Sea, and a Growth Spiral in hand. No more lands, however. So Burchett says, sure, I'll keep the island. I can go Growth Spiral, play the island, play Omen of the Sea, or Petty Theft. Ooh, hello, Fires of
And-
Invention. This is what you get for digging that deep if you're sitting in Yellow Hat's seat.
Yep. Send 6 to the bottom. Find what you're looking for.
Now the question is, do you play it?
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, right?
Well, I mean, this isn't a matchup as in game 1 that you need to have any sort of worry about counter magic.
There's no counter
Well, no,
magic.
that's actually not true. There is
Okay.
Thassa's Intervention.
Right.
So that may be.
And there's 4 of those, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so interesting. Nassif in the tank, trying to figure it out. Boy, but playing it and running out of Sphinx here is big game. And it looks like he's going to go for a little
Wow.
feeler here.
Interesting.
Oh, maybe not. No, he's decided just to go.
I'm
for
in.
it. Yep. And it's going to resolve. Now, the way priority works in Magic, it is going to be back on Nassif. There's nothing Autumn can do to prevent this Sphinx of Foresight from going on the stack. Now, they can bounce the Fires of Invention with Petty Theft or whatever, but this Sphinx of Foresight is going on the stack, and it is going to hit the battlefield now that we see what Autumn's drawn.
And Autumn's going to go with the Omen of the Sea here. Hey, there's the Thassa's Intervention.
Hey.
Love to have moments ago. It looks like Autumn is just aiming to play a Hydroid Crisis next turn if they're keeping this Stomping Ground on top.
Also getting the second red mana source for Storm's Wrath, as it does kill the Sphinx.
Also true, yes.
This deck usually has no problem using up any additional lands that you get. A lot of pressure on that Hydroid Crisis. Oh.
Interesting.
Oh, they put
okay, yeah,
Thassa's Intervention back up.
they're in the tank here. And there may be the thought process of, okay, I want to keep this Thassa's Intervention on top, and then Brazen Borrower, the Fires of Invention,
So
and
draw,
and counter it.
right. So draw Thassa's Intervention, draw Stomping Ground for draw step, and Autumn now has to make a decision straight away.
There is still the possibility of just playing the Crisis this turn and not necessarily going for the Borrower bounce plan.
Make a 4/4 Crisis.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That-
it's so
I think
tempting to get it up to 5, isn't it?
It's also just so scary to do that when your opponent has the fires in play, right?
Right.
If your opponent just plays
Oh,
Cavalier.
yes.
Oh well, okay, I am exploded into little bits.
And we have seen that happen in this larger match. So, Autumn says, I'm going to send this Fire's Invention back to your hand. I'm sure Nassif is fine with this. Not going to be playing Storm's Wrath here. Just going to leave up Thassa's intervention, it looks like.
The untapped Stomping Ground could have allowed Thassa's intervention for more than a power sink for 2, effectively, if, for instance, a Teferi came down with the land.
Good point.
There's also the possibility of, I guess you can't ever do like Brazen Borrower plus anything.
Ooh, no, but what you said, boy, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
If Nassif were to go untap land and play Teferi, Autumn, at least at the moment, wouldn't have any way to interact. Though it looks like they've dodged that. So now it's just a question of, is it going to be Fires of Invention back on the stack again, or is Nassif going to get tricky here? He is ahead. He's the one who thinks the Foresight sitting there. Kick things off with Fabled Passage.
Fire's coming right back down, but intervention is going to intervene.
So this was the fruition of the long-term game plan going back to the end of last turn from Autumn's perspective. Let's get this Fires of Invention out of here. And there's Thassa's intervention to do the trick. Now, where does Nassif go from here? For now, nowhere. Just going to attack with 4 with the Sphinx of Foresight and pass the turn back to Autumn. And now Autumn's going to unleash a pretty big Hydroid Krasis, although would be a little better with 1 more Toughness. Finds Growth Spiral, land, not a ton of action there. And Sphinx of Foresight, of course, while it's on the battlefield,
Very
triggers
on
as well.
top.
Ooh.
It's a powerful one, but in this position, how good is it?
Right, we haven't seen sight yet of Wilderness Reclamation for Autumn. And that's the card that it's particularly very good against.
And also just, we saw Nassif take a very aggressive line with Teferi bouncing Hydroid Krasis in previous games or previous match between these two. That was much more effective when backed up by a Fire's Invention and Cavalier of Flames.
Right.
Just able to get a ton of pressure going. That's not the kind of play that is nearly as effective in this sort of position where it's much more at parity.
Another good game between these two players. I have to say, these have been very exciting games. We've already finished 1 match between the 2 of them. And now we're in the second. And as I mentioned at the onset, if you are just tuning in, yeah, they did just play each other, and Nassif did just win. But in order to actually knock somebody out here in lower round 1, you need to win 2 matches against them. And this is the second match. Nassif is going to offer the trade Sphinx of Foresight for Hydroid Krasis, which ostensibly will help keep Teferi around a little longer. He's going to go Omen of the Sea first, though.
Finds Brazen Borrower.
Could be interesting.
And there's Teferi.
This isn't a fight.
And once again, we'll likely see Nassif plus Teferi, but these decisions do get very interesting because he could feel like he just needs to get the card. He's not facing down a Wilderness Reclamation, the card that Teferi is particularly good against, and minus it on your own Omen of the Sea is nice.
Yeah, some value.
It is.
And right now, without any creatures in play that could be killed by, say, Storm's Wrath. Obviously, the big reason that you end up plussing your Teferi is protect it from a Brazen Borrower attack or from Storm's Wrath. Storm's Wrath right here would end up being a lot of Autumn's mana anyway.
And wow, I got to say,
Reclamation,
Gabriel Nassif is going to be extremely happy that he decided to make this play, because this turn could have been Storm's Wrath, kill your Teferi, play Wilderness Reclamation. That would have been rough. So Nassif is going to be very happy. Now, the downside here, if you're sitting in Nassif's seat, though, is that Autumn does have a second copy of Brazen Borrower to send that Teferi pack in, and they are going to be able to actually get this rolling. Though, unfortunately for Autumn, nothing amazing to do outside of cast a couple of Brazen Borrowers, which isn't bad.
That's a pretty good one to have on top.
Hello, let's go digging.
But you don't actually get it now.
No, you don't.
This is just the scry off of
This
Temple.
is
There's
slow.
no way to immediately draw it.
Chat wants to know if a fishing hat is now required gear to become a professional Magic player. No.
I believe wearing a hat in Hawaii is very valuable to your chances of success.
What would you know, though, really?
I mean, neither of these are animal hats, so I don't know how
Right.
effective they'll be.
Right. You would have known if it was an animal hat. You still have that, right?
I do. It's actually on my trophy.
Yeah.
I keep it on
I've
my
seen it
trophy
like
on
behind
me.
your stream. You've
Yeah.
got, yeah. I've seen it. I'm like, what is that? Oh, I know what that is. Okay, so Wilderness Reclamation did hit the battlefield for Autumn, and now they've got access to 2 copies of Brazen Borrower, as long as Teferi's not on the battlefield just yet. But that's it. They did keep Thassa's Intervention, so they'll be drawing that next turn.
I mean, the fact that Autumn has the 2 Brazen Borrowers on adventures does give them a incredible insurance plan against Teferi coming back down. Even, play Teferi plus it, double Brazen Borrower kills it on the attack. You just respond with both. There's no ability for a Deafening Clarion to come down here or anything like that.
And it looks like Nassif is just going to take the most direct route that he can. He's just going to cast Kenrith the Return King.
He's back.
Did he ever leave?
There's a lot of Return Kings in these decks these days. We have to see like one of them. Right now, the Nassif's version has 3. I think a big part of that is just how much you value the pressure from all your creatures have haste.
So kind of interesting here for Burchett. They're going to actually just go ahead and crack Omen of the Sea for the Scry 2. Now, they already had a card that they wanted on top of their library. So this was actually just to look at the one below it, which actually ended up being a land that Autumn decided, no, I'll pass on it, thank you very much, and sent that to the bottom. But both Brazen Borrowers as well hit the battlefield, and now we're going to see Thassa's Intervention for the full amount. Let's go dig for, I guess, an explosion?
I imagine so, and I assume we'll see this explosion actually just kill Kenrith here, since it's not going to be lethal. So we're going to see the explosion, and then, interesting.
What else do you want? Another
Temple?
Wilderness Reclamation? Just a land?
It depends. I mean, Temple here gives you another Scry effect. I don't think another Wilderness Reclamation is that valuable. You know your opponent has Teferi, and your opponent actually could play the Teferi plus Deafening Clarion next turn, so you don't have the insurance policy with these Brazen Borrowers that you did before.
So we should see these Brazen Borrowers come in. Oh, and look at this. Autumn's actually looking to see, like, what if we end up seeing a flyer that gets haste, looking through every possible option, though ultimately they decide, no, we're good here. Attack with both of the Brazen Borrowers. Go to end step, untap with Wilderness Rec, explosion for 6, kill your Kenrith, but more importantly, bang, 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 6
a lot of cards
go in hand.
A whole lot of cards.
Yeah, now a pair of Uros.
There's Clarion.
Spiral. Okay, yeah,
So
definitely Clarion's a big deal.
Teferi plus Clarion here.
Wow.
Clears off the Brazen Borrowers.
Nice call, Brian. That's exactly how it played out.
He's actually, he
can just do it.
Yeah, he can do it at instant speed.
So he's going to wait and see, well, what do you want to do? Brazen Borrowers both getting sent to Teferi, and now we're going to see instant speed, Deafening Clarion from Teferi Time Ravelers plus ability there, meaning that he gets to stay alive, and that Wilderness Reclamation is doing nothing.
It's not quite nothing, given the fact that Castle Vantress is in play.
Okay, so a little more than nothing, but boy,
much worse.
It gets so good when you get to just go off, especially with
much
additional Wilderness Reclamation available. But yeah. So Temple again after casting Uro, the Titan of Nature's Wrath. And are we just going to cast Uro from the yard? Yeah, let's just escape.
They have, looks like 7 mana available. This could be Uro and then another Uro even. With the non-escaped version, just to get the, just get it in the graveyard and get the card draw and explore effect.
Yeah, I like where Autumn's sitting here. Expansion Explosion just went into the hand. The only issue left to really just slam the door on this game is to get rid of Teferi.
Right.
But right now, Nassif just doesn't have anything going outside of a defensive Teferi Time Raveler, but really no route to victory in sight, at least at the moment.
You want to keep the one on the right. That's the one who didn't escape. Or who did escape, rather. And now Autumn deciding, do I want to take this damage? The life total at this point for Autumn is not that important, and we see
turn was
actually enables them to get a ton of additional spells off. Even with that Teferi, the Wilderness Reclamation, yes, not actually providing tons of additional mana here, but does set up the Castle Vantress, and Autumn's just in a very comfortable spot.
It was an absurd turn. They even at the end were like, I'll just run out this this growth and then hit Island into Opt. It's like, okay, sure, just cast everything. So once again, things looking very good for Autumn here in game number 1 of our second match between these two players.
I mean, compare this to the previous match, right? Those games were Nassif with Fires. This is Nassif without Fires. And this game, Autumn navigated in such a way to bounce the Fires and Thassa's intervention it. And that choice was just so crucial to keep Nassif's deck from being able to fire it on cylinders like it had in the previous games.
Yeah, this looks like game from here. The Brazen Borrower gives Autumn the ability to bounce Teferi on their own turn, even play another Wilderness Reclamation, and then go into their end step with extra mana plus 2 full untaps and an explosion in hand. Just doesn't really feel like there's a way out here for Nassif.
Autumn can just Brazen Borrower bounce the Kenrith and attack, but I expect, we're going to see this bounced prior to attack, so not to give Autumn an additional card.
But that should lock up the game for Autumn. Now Petty Theft can get Teferi out of here. Second Wilderness Reclamation, float a bunch of mana, untap, float a bunch of mana, untap, tap all the rest of them, and kill you.
It's a lot of lands with 2 Reclamations and Explosion, and we see, as Nassif sees this come down and all the lands start tapping, okay, I know it's happening.
I think I'm not surviving this one, says Gabriel Nassif, and he would be correct. There's a big untap. Well, that's not enough. There it is, 15 already.
Kaboom.
And that is game number 1 going to Autumn Burchett. Not so easy, Gabriel Nassif. And look at the relief on Autumn's face. They're just like, thank God I got a win here. Let's do it again. Now the players, of course, are going to start consulting sideboards.
And we saw the dynamic of this matchup can change pretty dramatically after sideboarding. Autumn does have just a lot more interactive effects that can stop Nassif from being able to just play out the Fire's Invention whenever he wants. Nassif does have his own sideboard cards. Robber of the Rich didn't really come up a ton in the previous sideboarded game, but does have the ability to just dig for pretty powerful tools to help him just get resources effectively.
Nassif's going to finish up sideboarding here. I heard Autumn talking about doing some extra play testing down the stretch there, figuring out how the matchup went against Jeskai Fires, and feeling like it really paid off here in the tournament, feeling more prepared, more confident about how the sideboard plan goes, and what the lines of play look like when you actually play against the deck.
Yeah, as we've seen, clearly tons of kind of weird scenarios you can get yourself in, and understanding what's important when. One of the really impressive things that I think we saw earlier was Autumn's choice, I believe it was in a previous match, to actually use a Brazen Borrower to bounce something that they could have countered.
Yes.
Just to get the player to commit mana multiple turns over, recognizing how the dynamic of those turns would play out. And that's the level of familiarity and comfort and just knowledge that's just so important to have at this incredibly high level.
All right, Nassif has submitted, and we're heading into game number 2. This is our second match between these players, playing best 2 out of 3 matches, with Nassif up a match currently. This is an elimination, as will, well, all the matches that we're doing from here on out. So losers got to be prepared to go grab their stuff and head out to the beach after this, one way or the other. It's not all bad news for the person who loses. They get a nice chunk of money and they're in Hawaii, but nobody wants that at this point in the tournament. They want to continue and keep that dream alive. of being your next Magic the Gathering World Champion. So, Nassif's going to get to kick things off here, and it looks like he's revealed Sphinx of Foresight already, and he'll get that Scry 3.
Faster than last time.
A little bit. New personal record for Nassif. He's going to play Temple of Triumph before
Gonna get to his
thinking
draw
about
step.
Scry.
I wonder what the average turn it's taken Nassif to get to his first land drop in this tournament has been. But, between scries from Sphinx of Foresight and just, Nassif being Nassif.
Chat says Nassif is a, quote, deliberate player. I
Yeah.
may have said that before on the
Oh, I've definitely said
Yeah.
that. I mean, I have made the reference before that most people they play Magic and they kind of get into routines. They have they're like, okay, this is what I do to this point, and I'm convinced that Nassif basically breaks down the rules of Magic from first principles before he makes every single play. He's like, all right, it's my turn. On your turn in a game of Magic, you can play a land. I will choose to play a land. Which land will I play? I've got 3 different land. I think it will be. Oh wait, maybe no. Okay, it's this one. Anyway, Robert the Rich going to come down, and it is, in fact, Autumn who's rich here.
Yeah.
Finds a growth spiral.
That could be interesting if Nassif has another, gets an attack again. Especially if he draws a land. Which he did. So what are the options here from Autumn's perspective? They have Petty Theft, Growth Spiral, or if an opportunity presents itself, a Mystical Dispute.
Well, Nassif needs to get the attack in with the Robber of the Rich, which would let him play the growth spiral that he stole.
That's right. He also may find something even better.
What do you get?
It must have been a land. It
Land,
just
yeah.
went straight away.
You don't get to steal land.
Mystical Dispute looming large here as you see Nassif look down at that Teferi Time Raveler in his hand and think, well, that'd be a nice one to get on the battlefield right here. But look at this. He's going to test the waters with a growth spiral that he stole. And we're going to see a response. And I'm curious to see if Autumn also wants to go for the Mystical Dispute or if they think that that's best kept for something stronger.
I feel like there's just too many cards that are so powerful for you to Mystical Dispute in this matchup, most notably Teferi,
Right.
which can shut down everything that your deck is really looking to do. And I think this is largely a bait from Nassif. He wants Autumn to fire off a Mystical Dispute if there's one available.
It's a nice position to fire off that. You put it, it's bait, right? It's like, hey, would you like to counter this? I'm going to test the waters. But it's not bad for Nassif either way, right? If this resolves, he gets to play his Temple of Triumph here. He'll have 4 mana. Wow. Mystical Dispute,
All right.
It is Kibler.
I am a little surprised by that, but it does mean that Nassif can't actually ramp out mana, which is valuable. For instance, there could be next turn fires into Cavalier. Like that.
Right.
Obviously, that's something that you can answer with the Mystical Dispute. But I wonder what the specific reasoning for choosing Mystical Dispute that is. Is it simply the there's the possibility you need to get cards out of my hand, so Robert the Rich doesn't keep stealing things.
Well, it has left Nassif in a position where he can now decide to run out Teferi Time Raveler and see if it's going to resolve, and it will.
Well, I imagine that Autumn will Brazen Borrower in response.
Just cast a 3/1 flyer.
I think that just casting a 3/1 flyer here is actually pretty powerful. You get to attack Teferi and then attack Teferi again.
Right.
Gonna go with Growth Spiral, though.
Okay, Growth Spiral it is. Steam Vents hits the battlefield.
Okay, this is gonna be
Return the
This is the other play that I think is like makes a lot of sense. It's just ensure that there's not the pressure on you. Maximize the mana that you have at your disposal. There is still the possibility of just Brazen Borrower this Teferi as well.
That Robber of the Rich did some nice work, though. It got a free spell for Nassif and in conjunction with a few shock lands. Autumn's at 12.
Yep. Just a reminder for everyone, this is best of 3, best of 3. So Nassif won the first match between these two, while Autumn is up 1 game in this match. So if Autumn does win this, then we will go to a 3rd full match. If Nassif wins this, we obviously go to game 3 of this match and proceed from there.
And look at this. Nassif is going to take a different tack this time. He's going to minus Teferi Time Raveler to get the card.
Interesting. I think some of that is just that his hand is not that powerful. Doesn't have access to Fires of Invention. Doesn't have Cavalier and such. And also, after sideboarding, there's less threat to Teferi getting Storm's Wrath. You don't have at least as many Storm's Wrath, I imagine, in the deck for Autumn. So it's less likely to actually get killed. As a Mystical Dispute off the Scry, which is obviously a very powerful card, but Teferi's in play right now, which makes the Mystical Dispute a lot less appealing.
On many levels. Many, many levels. That one's going to have to go to the bottom, says Autumn. All right, Nassif finds a copy of Mystical Dispute of his own. And man, this Teferi Time Raveler has been so annoying for Autumn over the course of our 2 matches played thus far. But a 3/3 Hydroid Crisis doing a decent job of pressuring Teferi, maybe forcing Nassif into running out the Sphinx of Foresight as a blocker.
It also does prevent, a Robber of the Rich that Autumn knows is in the hand from getting in for damage. But yeah, the minus on the Teferi there did make it vulnerable to just getting attacked.
Yes.
And that's something that Autumn is trying to take full advantage of.
Yeah, and this is a position where Nassif could run out Sphinx of Foresight, just have it returned to his hand with Petty Theft, and then lose Teferi Time Raveler. That is the world that Nassif lives in at the moment. But that is also the line that he's going to take. Sphinx of Foresight on the battlefield. Play Temple of Triumph. Looks like he sees another copy of Sphinx of Foresight. And he put it back on top of his library. Another copy of Expansion Explosion off the top for Autumn. But they do have that Petty Theft in hand and could just kill Teferi right here, right now. That's got to be tempting.
Could also just fire off Explosion at Teferi if they want to do that. And there are Mystical Disputes in Nassif's deck, so getting to use an expensive effect and saving a cheaper effect might be something that's worth considering at least.
But it is going to be Sphinx of Foresight sent packing, and that means that Hydroid Crisis gets to get through to the red zone, take care of Teferi Time Raveler before the turn gets passed. That was a nice sequence for Autumn, taking care of a truly problematic permanent. We still don't see any of the really big hitters here for Nassif, particularly Fires of Invention hasn't shown up yet.
Nassif has to feel like at least a decent amount of time here.
Yeah.
There's not actually that many cards in Autumn's hand, right? There's 2 cards. We know they're Expansion Explosions, but there are, of course, the 2 Brazen Borrowers on Adventure and the Uro that is in range to be escaped.
Untapped land here for Nassif. Perhaps hoping to leave up some combination of Petty Theft, Omen of the Sea, or Mystical Dispute. Depending on how things turn out. So there's Sphinx of Foresight. Now that's just bigger than the Hydroid Crisis. Hello, Wilderness Reclamation.
That's
off
a card.
the top with double Expansion Explosion in hand. You could see some fireworks there. Though right now Nassif at least somewhat safe from it, given that he has the Petty Theft to make sure it doesn't stick for this turn.
This is a bit of an awkward spot because the fact that Nassif does have mana open, does have those mystical disputes in after sideboarding. Difficult to get the expansion explosion off at this point. Wilderness Reclamation, as you mentioned, can get answered by the Brazen Borrower at this point as well. And the Krasis is just small in the Sphinx.
Nassif's going to go with Omen of the Sea. He's going to resolve.
He's getting the scry on.
He's taking a look at that steam vents, though he hasn't actually put it back on top of his library. He's still thinking. And thinking.
As Nassif is wont to do.
Mm-hmm.
That sound is so familiar.
Nassif has no extra time banked. All right, so it
And
looks like he decided
Cavalier.
to go top, drawing Steve Vance, leaving Cavalier of Flames on top of his library, which he'll draw for the turn here.
That's a powerful one.
It is. Can he turn this into a damage race of sorts?
I mean, that's really the key here of the Krasis being just 3/3. Cavalier of Flame can come down. Autumn has been very cagey about committing too much on their turn.
So we
And-
could see Cavalier, I guess, plus Robber of the Rich, or leave up. Oh, this gets interesting, actually, doesn't it? With Petty Theft and Mystical Dispute, too.
See, Autumn has only, only 7 mana, but crucially, that is not quite enough to explosion the Sphinx. Let's say, Gab were to play the Cavalier, haste it, send in both. There's no opportunity for Autumn to just take out the Sphinx of Foresight in opportunity in a world where Hat taps out. Just gonna go in with the Sphinx of Foresight here.
Okay, down to 12 goes Autumn Burchett. And we're just going to see another copy of Sphinx of Foresight, which is going to leave Nassif with both Petty Theft and Mystical Dispute available. And look at this. Autumn says, you think this mana is just going to be left alone? No, no, no. I'm going to
spend
fire
it.
off Explosion for 3.
Yeah, you got to spend that, and that's going to get Mystical Disputed.
And there we go.
But crucially, the fact that Gab left up mana for Petty Theft as well means that this possible Wilderness Reclamation into Explosion that Autumn has here is just not that impressive. Going to go with Uro instead.
Now, is this a Uro that's escaping?
It is.
Okay. So that'll leave behind a nice 6/6 body.
And the big problem, though,
Mhm.
there's still Brazen Borrower. It's very unlikely that Uro is going to actually get to attack, and it becomes much more difficult to escape the second time.
Okay, so Uro hits the battlefield, draws another Uro. No land to hit here. No attacks in sight for Autumn. So it looks like we're just going to pass the turn back with Opt and a pair of Brazen Borrowers on Adventure. And now we're going to see the trap sprung here for Gabriel Nassif. He's going to play Petty Theft to return Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath to hand. And look at his hand. He has Cavalier of Flame all ready to go. Gets him in for a very large chunk of damage if it all goes according to plan.
And Autumn here was thinking of playing this Brazen Borrower in response, it looked like. That does just say out loud, shields down,
Yes.
right? And I'm not sure that's where you want to be in this situation. The Sphinx is, incidentally, they're letting Gab continue scrying.
It's
right?
true.
And the scries are very, very valuable here, ensuring that Gab's able to dig 2 quality cards rather than just finding lower impact stuff like Autumn may have to deal with. Robert the Rich on top. We see top left of the screen. And Autumn does have a pretty big hand now, and Gab's down to just a couple cards.
Couple of nice ones, though, for Nassif. Particularly the Cavalier Flame. That is the big finisher. And looks like Nassif found something that he likes. It's a second copy of Robber of the Rich.
Okay, double Robber here.
Is this just double Robber bash you?
I think so. It's trying to set up.
That's guaranteed 10 damage.
Yeah, that gets in 10 damage here, and that puts Autumn down to just 5. There is a Brazen Borrower. Autumn could Brazen Borrower double block, killing one of the Sphinxes of Foresight.
Also, we could see some really interesting stuff because both of these Brazen Borrowers are going to trigger. Things could get interesting depending on what they find.
What gets robbed?
There's 3 mana available still here for Nassif. So Rob, that was a land.
Whoa!
An expansion explosion.
Look at the expression on Autumn's face. It's like, that's a scary one. That's a really scary one.
That's the type of card that can finish off an opponent, and you do not play against that when you're playing against Jeskai Fires. You don't even think of that type of card. They always kill you by beating you down with these huge creatures. So it's a very big change of pace here, and it looks like the best block for Autumn is just to gobble up one of these Robbers of the Rich.
Yeah, crucially, the Brazen Borrowers can only block flyers. So if Autumn were to Brazen Borrower here, can only, at best, chump block a Sphinx or double block and lose both.
Now we are going to see one of them hit the battlefield after combat. And Nassif is actually looking at the copy of Brazen Borrower that he has in hand and deciding, maybe I want to do something? No, you're fine. Passes the turn back, land off the top here for Autumn. Autumn took a lot of damage that turn, down to just 5 life.
And knowing that Explosion is there waiting for the Robber attack is pretty scary. Looks like it's Wilderness Reclamation time. There's only 1 card left in Gab's hand.
And it's just the Cavalier Flame. So nothing that he can do here. It's just all up to Autumn. It's not bad.
Well,
tap 4, and then you've got 8 mana additional, so 12 total.
But what do you do with it?
I don't know.
The Robber of the Rich, even if it doesn't get through, it activates the Expansion Explosion for next turn. And that's pretty scary. You're at just 5 life.
So you take 3 from that minimum?
I mean, there is the possibility of actually just casting Explosion on Robber of the Rich.
Yeah.
To prevent that possibility. Is that more threatening than the Sphinxes?
That is interesting. Then you have a theoretical position where you can double block a Sphinx, go to 1. Now, we happen to know that last card in hand is Cavalier of Flame. Oh, and let's not forget this other Brazen Borrower as well. So that's not a plan at all. Oh, boy, this is getting very sketchy very quickly here for Autumn. Autumn's up again in this match. This one may be slipping away, though.
So there is, Explosion can possibly take out either Robber or a Sphinx. The Sphinx represents, at least theoretically, it represents a lot of damage, but doesn't represent the same kind of threat as the Explosion, which can obviously either target a creature or go phase and draw extra cards for Nassif. That's one of the crucial things. Nassif's very low in resources, so the threat of that additional burst of resources is huge.
Okay, so let's see what Autumn decides to do. They've left themselves 4 untapped mana. That Robber of the Rich play that you described a few minutes ago, Brian, means that the opposing Expansion Explosion gets left hung out to dry. There's a fry.
And the Mystical Dispute would have been great against the Explosion.
Yes. So at any rate, that Expansion Explosion that Nassif got to exile is no longer relevant, but still the pressure is absolutely massive here So Fry can kill one of these Sphinxes?
And perhaps more importantly, Mystical Dispute can stop Cavalier of Flame from coming down.
Right. Autumn has left 4 mana untapped.
And last turn, there was the possibility that if Autumn attacks and Nassif doesn't block, that Reclamation into Explosion to face could be lethal. But of course, that leaves you just dead if Nassif just plays Bar and blocks. So,
A couple of other interesting interactions here. One of them,
Bar was a rogue.
Was a rogue.
It's a rogue.
Yep. So thanks, chat, for that. Also, what about Expansion Fry?
okay,
Is that a thing to kill both of the Sphinxes?
that's an option.
Boy, this one got real interesting real quick. And as you see, Nassif playing with fire once again. What was that? Oh, Elspeth conquers death.
Ooh.
That's a nice answer to the Wilderness Reclamation.
Or the Brazen Bar, which is just theoretically lethal.
Yes, that's true.
So if you Mystical Dispute this, then you basically you trade in chump block. I think that I think that you have to, if you let this resolve, the Chapter 2 is terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Chapter 3 is, of course, really powerful. But if you counter this, then you don't have the ability to actually deal with your opponent's board, which I think is perhaps more important right now.
Autumn says, I do what I got to do.
Yeah.
Elspeth conquers death, comes down, takes care of Wilderness Reclamation permanently, and then the team gets sent in. Are we going to see Expansion Fry to kill Sphinx and Sphinx, or is it just going to be enough to get one of them?
There's the expansion that
Oh.
Nassif can cast, too.
He can. He can actually copy his own to kill a blocker, right?
Oh, so this is actually, I think, a fairly crucial mistake on Autumn's part. If Autumn had cast Fry first, there's no opportunity to expansion Fry for Nassif because of the Brazen Bar has to have attacked already.
Right, you're
So
right.
this perhaps was Autumn not recognizing that Brazen Bar was a rogue and the implications of that being allowed to attack before casting the Fry.
They may have just been thinking, I just don't want you to be able to cast Explosion,
Right.
but expansion matters here.
Right.
And we're going to see this board state get demolished from both sides, both of the Sphinxes down, as well as the only other creatures. Look at that, everything's gone. Everything's gone.
Oh, there's a Wilderness Reclamation.
We had 5 creatures,
Yeah.
0. Oh, and a Wilderness Rec.
Being cleaned up a bit.
That's really funny. So now where do we go? Wow, what a game.
Yeah, this is definitely a close one.
By the way, Chad says so much fried chicken. Lots of them. An Ether Gust, that could definitely come in handy for Autumn.
Yeah, worth noting, these players do have a limited amount of time on their clocks in this game. Nassif is into his final 10 minutes available.
Also with no rope to play with.
Autumn actually only 7.5, and there's a lot of clicks.
Yes, this deck, we've watched Autumn play and they're quite proficient at it, but it is very click intensive.
Fires is actually super interesting here because it means that you can't just Mystical Dispute the Cavalier effectively.
And let's not forget that Elspeth Conquers Death is on Chapter 2. So that's going to put a significant tax on Autumn's plays this turn and next, depending on what they are.
Autumn does have a lot of mana available, though. There's 7 total. So can't cast both Gust and Dispute this turn, but can cast either.
Nassif looking at his options, deciding to go for Fires of Invention, which is going to get, woo, almost got Ether Gusted. And look at this. Autumn considering just letting it resolve. Only one card left in hand. Whew. Now the Cavalier goes on the stack, and that's going to have to get Ether Gusted.
Yep.
Still, that's a nice sequence there for Autumn. Nassif has no cards in hand, so doesn't get to take care of that or take advantage of that enters the battlefield ability.
One key thing here is that Autumn now has full information, right?
Yes.
You know exactly what Nassif is able to do. No cards in hand. You're drawing exactly this. What exactly Nassif can bring back with Elspeth Conquers Death is, of course, very important for Autumn to be aware of. That mystical dispute is looking pretty bad at this point, given that there's the fires in play and something just coming back for free with Elspeth Conquer's deck. You know, it's looking pretty good is this Hydroid Crisis for 8.
Absolutely fantastic here for Autumn Lily. 4 cards into hand. An 8/8 Flying Trampler plus 3 damage coming in from this Brazen Borrower is going to knock Nassif down to 11. And we know what he's drawing.
Yep.
And it's a Cavalier Flame. Look, it is one of his better cards, but is it good enough here? Starting to feel like no. Now, what can he get back with Elspeth Conquers Death? That's the thing that I'm most curious about.
If you're going to scry, it's like, okay, if Cavalier is not good enough, I need something else.
Right. This also could be just scryed the card below it.
Right.
Because we could easily see 2 creatures on the battlefield attacking for a ton of damage. He did keep Cavalier, it looks like. Okay, so Cavalier in hand. And now we're going to see Chapter 3 from Elspeth Conquers Death. What do you get back? I assume there's something.
There is just a fairy in there, which can at least mess with Autumn's ability to interact. A creature would allow you to
wait, if it's
haste up with
Teferi,
Cavalier.
wouldn't that just end the game? So
Teferi?
Cavalier goes on the battlefield, and then there's 1, 2, 3 activations. Oh, that isn't quite enough, is it?
Not quite enough, and Autumn has his Nightback Ambusher.
Okay.
Got to play it now, because
Yes.
once the Teferi comes into play, there's no casting it.
That's right. So, wow, this game has almost ended a few times, and it looks like it's not going to here either. Nightpack Ambusher giving an additional blocker. Teferi is at 5 loyalty, but that's because of the extra loyalty counter. Teferi has not been used yet this turn still.
The Cavalier Flame can come down here, and at this point, there's no need to chump block. The Crisis going back to hand does mean that that's available to Autumn next turn, but at least doesn't represent lethal damage coming through, which otherwise Autumn would have. Now a Sphinx of Foresight alongside it with the card draw. So 2 creatures coming down here. It does mean that this is chump block territory for Autumn at this point. So does Nassif want to try and find something better? Maybe there's a second Cavalier. No, not going to go digging. Does find this, the Sphinx to go with it, and then I will expect these to be hasted in to force that chump block of the ambush.
Force the chump block. Also get in for a bunch of damage. Boy, this has been a close one back and forth.
And crucial, this is game 2, and look at those clocks.
Yes, that's what I was just looking at. A little over 5.5 minutes for Autumn, a little over 6 minutes for Nassif. These players have been playing very carefully, and you can understand why. With so much on the line.
So this is a forced chump block here from the ambusher.
Yeah, it's going to have to jump in front of the Cavalier of Flame this time.
Nassif can double pump.
Right, pump again, so that's 7 damage in the air. Autumn is going to fall down to just 3 life.
Second Storm's Wrath.
Is Storm's Wrath something that
That can full clear.
is interested in? That will kill just the flyer.
There's already one in hand.
I should say both flyers. Oh, the second Storm's Wrath, right. Wipe the board, that sounds good. Kill Teferi, although Teferi's dying anyway here. I suppose just getting that Cavalier off the battlefield's worth it. You would have an opponent.
mean,
just stone cold top decking here.
do you just need to fire off Hydroid Crisis here?
That's interesting.
One of the really scary things. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be the double Storm's Wrath. If this is
But
just,
Nassif can find stuff.
it's true. If this is just Storm's Wrath, you are dead to any of Cavalier Flames or Kenrith because they give haste attackers.
Yes, that's true.
And how many lands are in Nassif's graveyard?
Oh,
Is
wait
this
a
just,
minute.
is this just going to be lethal damage
I
if you do
forgot.
Storm's Wrath?
This has been a very, very, very long game. I don't know how many lands are in his yard, but that could absolutely be a factor. If it's 3 or more, then it would just be over. It must be not enough or 0.
Or just looking to clear and then play the Uro to block.
Okay, and then this is also going to put Autumn back up to 6 life. There's no way there's that many lands in the yard, right, for Nassif. And then, this is scary stuff, though. Okay, away they go.
How many lands are there? Oh, is it 0? It was 0.
Okay, so let's see what Nassif finds. It's an island.
Oof. And that's Uro ready to attack.
Right, there's also a Castle Vantress activation as this one finally slipped away from Gabriel Nassif and into Autumn Burchett's favor, and Aethergus is certainly a helpful card here as well. Yeah, this one feels like it is going to be in hand for Autumn Burchett. Down to 2 goes Nassif, 1 more draw step. But with this Hydroid Crisis, come on, there's no way.
Yeah.
Just a cool 8/8 Flying Trampler again, by the way. It's the second time that's hit the battlefield. And Autumn can breathe a sigh of relief. They know that they have this one in the bag. And these clocks won't be an issue as well. That was an important development.
Oh, look at that sigh of relief. Whew. Okay.
So, match number 2 goes to Autumn. And that means that we're going to get a third and deciding match between those 2 players. But for now, we've got more deciding action for you. Jean-Emmanuel Duprov versus Sebastian Pozzo. They're playing right now in their third match, third deciding game. So we're going to head over to there because we don't want to miss it and see who can win that one between Duprov and Pozzo.
A lot going on right now.
Yeah.
A lot of action.
Yes.
Whew.
I feel like my clock got a little low at some point during that match as well. It does look like it's the deciding, or the third game, I should say, as well. Here in the lower round 1, I will remind you, these players each have a match win apiece against each other and a game win apiece in this match. So this is it. The loser of this match is done. Their tournament is over. The winner gets to advance.
And this is a matchup that has generally over the course of this weekend tended to significantly favor mono red. We've seen the Temur Reclamation deck struggle a bit in order to be fast enough to overcome the aggression from mono red. And this looks like a pretty solid draw from Pozzo, and Duprov's going to mulligan.
So what does he want to return? Throw a land
looks
back.
like the land. Interestingly, the ability to actually just cast Storm's Wrath and Force is pretty important, but at the same time, you also really want the Brazen Borrowers to break up your opponent's ability to just land Annex, so your Wrath doesn't do enough.
Right. We've seen Annex do so much good work, providing something that mono red decks don't normally have access to, which is a great way to recover from a sweeper effect. And sweeper effects are a very real thing in this tournament. People are playing Storm's Wrath in their red decks, in addition to Shatter the Skies in the white decks. So yeah, Annex has really done a great job this weekend. Here's Robber of the Rich to kick things off, though, for Sebastian Pozzo.
Despite the mulligan, it is still,
And it's an Uro.
Interesting.
Another one off the top there for Jean-Emmanuel. He's going to have to pay the 2 life here just to keep Brazen Borrower available. Kind of cross his fingers. Uh-oh, there's Torbran off the top of the library with land number 4 coming next turn. This could get ugly. Robber of the Rich into Annex, into Torbran. Yeah.
It's a lot of scary stuff here.
Not loving Jean-Emmanuel's spot there.
Well, he does have the Brazen Borrowers to help slow Pozzo down here. So he's at least not getting attacked this turn. If Annex comes down, he's obviously much less powerful by himself. But the Annex into Torbran is particularly powerful because that's just a lot of devotion. And you want to clear up Torbran with your Storm's Wrath, and well, if Annex is in play, you're at least getting those satyrs left over.
Yeah, the devotion part's kind of forgotten sometimes. Just that play alone is attacking for 5 power plus the extra.
Oh, yeah.
Torbran, it's 7 damage.
Yes, it's a lot of damage.
It's a huge hit.
They're
and
good
that's
friends.
Just for the one yes, yes. Where do you think Torbran got his axe from?
Annex.
It was an axe. Hardened in forge, of course.
What's you do with axes? Harden them in fortune.
Another brazen borrower. There's one on an adventure, maybe one on top of the library, and one in his hand. Uro's going to buoy his life total back up to 19, but then go in the graveyard. And here's Robber of the Rich now for Pacho times 2.
And specifically the fact that that DePross tapped out here, and you get the trigger from both the robbers, the devotion from both these, and crucially, Torbran is even better with just a bunch of tokens than it is giving the devotion to Annex here.
Yeah, perhaps the best thing that could happen for Patso is to have Storm's Wrath. Give him, what, 4 1/1s? Torbran, they're all effectively 3/1s.
Yeah.
They're dead.
It's just, it's just so much damage.
If he casts it and does nothing else, he's just dead. Tough spot here for Jean-Emmanuel. They've played a heck of a 3-match series here. It's all come down to this one final game to see which one of our players gets to advance in the tournament and which one is done for the day and for the tournament, for that matter. There's Temple. Is Jean-Emmanuel going to pull the trigger on this Storm's Wrath? If he does, his tournament's over, but he does not know that. And he's going to pass the turn back. Now it's in Sebastian Pozzo's hand. He has Torbran, Thane of Redfell at the ready. That's sort of the obvious, drop the hammer style play, but he has other options with Infuriate, Scorch Spitter, Rimrock Knight. Boy, you gotta love the position here for Pozzo.
Pozzo just declares his attack.
He's gonna go to attacks, so at the beginning of combat, we're gonna see Annex, Harden, and the Forge get returned to hand. Now this does mean that the 2 Robbers of the Rich still get to attack. And really, if Pozzo wanted, he could tack on, 6 extra damage here, 5 extra damage as well. Although it feels like he probably is incentivized to just get Annex back on the battlefield.
Yeah, Annex is just really important to give yourself insulation against the Storm's Wrath.
Also, we should keep an eye on the cards that the Robber of Rich has...
yeah, there's an opt at least.
Yeah, there's an opt and a Brazen Borrower, as well as Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Now, at this juncture, Pozzo is actually richer, as it were, but those are cards that were done before. And he can actually cast Opt and Annex here. And he's even found a land, so he could add a Scorch Spitter to the battlefield, too. This one is starting to really look good for Pozzo. I mean, look at the hand here for Jean-Emmanuel. How does he get out of this mess?
Not looking likely at this point. I mean, Uro is really his best bet, but he doesn't even have that many cards in his graveyard at this point. So much of what he's done has been send things on adventures.
So are we just going to see Scorch Spitter Annex here from Sebastian? Wow. Annex Harden in the Forge, though, has been such a game changer. Let's just say that was like a good, efficient 3-drop that people like to play. This game would be so different. Storm's Wrath would have wiped the board and made Pozzo completely rebuild. Okay, he's just going to cast Annex here.
Scorching Dragonfire can answer the Annex, but you have to play Scorch into Storm's Wrath, and then there's still a follow-up here. Scorching Dragonfire, Storm's Wrath, you're at 7 against nothing on board.
He could save it, too. He can Infuriate to save Annex.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, it won't really work out for him.
Yeah, look at the little bit of smirk.
But yeah, I shouldn't say that. It will actually work out for him. So this is just brutal. Jean-Emmanuel Duprat, that smirk may have been him recognizing that his tournament is coming to an end, because this Storm's Wrath is simply going to leave too big of a board. Oh, that guy's going to get exiled. Now we're going to get the 2 Hardened and the Forge triggers, 2 1/1s, plus Rimrock Knight, plus Torbran is lethal.
That's just going to be
too much.
Going to be all of it.
So this is it. Torbran hits the battlefield. A nod of resignation from Jean-Emmanuel Duprat, and Sebastian Pozzo is going to defeat him and advance. Congratulations, Sebastian. You are still alive in the tournament. For Jean-Emmanuel, his great run ends here.
Yeah, it is worth noting just how close that match was. Like, we only saw that game of that match, but that was game 3 of match 3 of that deciding match between those 2 players. So
they played.
Clearly, a lot went better for Duprat in games other than that one.
Yeah, and every match they played all 3.
Right.
That was 3-6-9. Incredible stuff there to finish things off for that round, or for that match, I should say, because, of course, we're not done in this round.
Oh, no.
We've still got
There's more.
The 3rd and deciding match for our best of 3 between Autumn and Nassif. So what we're going to do right now is take a short break, grab a little bit of water. You might want to do the same. When we come back, we're going to have that conclusion. Don't go anywhere.
Hello. This is Raf. ZY. It's Marcio here. This is Andre. Seth. Piotr there. This is Gabe. Paolo. Andrea. Matthias. This is Chris. Sebastian. And Javier. It's Storm. Hey, it's Warren. Who's this? Cake or pie? A good warm rhubarb pie. Covered in an ice cream. Cake, of course. It's way better than pie. I don't think you can even compare pie. It's gotta be cake. I got sick off pecan pie one time and I think I'd go for cookies. I'm a huge fan of cookies, actually.
Oh, that's interesting.
Flight is definitely the flashier one, but I'd have to go with power teleportation sounds incredible. Just being able to pop anywhere I want seems more utilitarian.
It's way more convenient. Flying's kind of, you get to show off more.
For one day, fly. For my whole life, probably teleportation.
Power of flight, I'm worried that like governments would see someone flying through the air and try and shoot them down or something.
Teleportation. That's like the easiest question of all. Who needs flying? You can do the same thing, just quicker. I don't even need to fly to Hawaii. I could just do that. Oh, that sounds great.
Welcome back to coverage of World Championship 26, powered by Alienware. An update now on our top 4 that's coming tomorrow. It will start at 10 a.m. Honolulu time. 10 a.m. Honolulu time. That is a change, so just keep that in your head for tomorrow morning. And if you're in Hawaii, come here and see us at the Convention Center, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for our top 4. Well, Paul, that is the end to the tournament for Jean-Emmanuel Duprat.
Yeah, I mean, he had a fantastic run, one of the deepest runs with the Temur Reclamation deck, which kind of got destroyed in day 1 of the event. But, you know, I want to say, you know, he had a fantastic year, you know, and
Sorry, it's so
windy.
yeah, and it's tough to see. But
I don't know if you're gonna make it through this
anyways,
commentary.
really good run for Duprat. But we've seen Mono Red kind of go out on top of Temur Rec before, and that's kind of what we saw here again.
Yeah, and Autumn, you know, they've got to play another match here against Nassif.
Such a close match that we just saw with Potso coming out on top, and this match that's still ongoing is so close. I actually got the chance to see Nassif when I was walking back out to this area, and I was like, hey, how you feeling for the next match? He just, I mean, we get the chance to see all of the players' cards, and they're both playing so well, and these matches are so close. I mean, you even saw how narrow the time was at the very end.
All right, before we blow away, let's throw it back inside for the concluding match, Nassif versus Burchett.
Wait, it's a lot nicer in here.
I feel like
there's no sunshine, but we're not getting blown away.
Here we just have like the animation of Uro coming down and
Yes.
like, you know, bringing some sort of massive nature's wrath upon this. That's actually just happening
It's
outside.
happening out there. That's Brian Kibler and Marshall Sutcliffe. Let's head on down to the feature. We've got the deciding match here between Autumn Burchett and Gabriel Nassif all lined up for you. As we come back, game 1 just finished. It went to Nassif. So Nassif finds himself up 1-0 in what has really been a classic between these two. Super close games, lots of great plays, intricate stuff, not clear who's gonna win at any given point, and then finally somebody asserts their domination and ends up finding the win. In the first match, it was Gabriel Nassif. In the second match, it was Autumn Burchett, and now we get the decider with Gabriel up a game.
Yeah, and crucially though, I do think that sideboarding seems like the matchup improves more for Autumn than it does for Nassif.
Agreed.
The access to Mystical Dispute, access to Nightback Ambusher, Aether Gust are just all so powerful, and we haven't really seen the Robber of the Rich that Nassif's bringing in be that impactful. It's been okay, and you know, it's certainly better than the Deafening Clarions and he's sideboarding out, but I don't feel like it's nearly the sort of heavy hitter that Autumn has access to.
Fry, baby, Fry. It's been doing good work,
Yeah.
but this is the ultimate challenge now for Autumn. They have to win both games if they're going to stay alive and keep this dream of the World Championship going. Nassif, far more
Only to
experienced
5, though.
at this level, going down to 5. And now deciding whether to keep. Now, what do you make of the hand here for Autumn? That is a 5-land opener in a sideboarded game with Expansion Explosion, something that's not going to do much for a while, and then an Uro.
I think that Autumn's hand is kind of mediocre here. The Uro does give you both a bit of ramp and a additional card draw, of course. So that can make that Expansion Explosion better. Then there may be just some element of nerves here. You know, Autumn, yes, Autumn has been you know, in a Mythic Championship final, has played like very much at the top level, but this is still the biggest game they've ever played. This is the biggest game that pretty much anyone's ever played, right?
That's right.
This is just so far beyond any tournament that we've ever had in Magic before, that being, you know, in a position where you are 1 game away from being eliminated is huge.
It really is. And, you know, Nassif has been here many times before. He has played at these levels. He has to have an experience advantage there as far as keeping himself calm, cool, collected, under control. A Mystical Dispute, 1 turn too late there for Autumn, as Teferi Time Raveler already on the battlefield now for Nassif.
And we do see, unlike in previous games, Nassif has chose to tick down. A couple reasons there. 1, he needs more cards.
Yes.
He double mulligan here. He can't just sit there and tick up Teferi and hope that that gives him the road to victory. 2, this is now after sideboarding, and Fry is a concern. So Fry can kill a Teferi even if you tick it up, so you might as well get a little bit of value out of it in this sort of situation.
So Nassif now has a second copy of Teferi Time Raveler, a Brazen Borrower, Mystical Dispute, a Cavalier of Flame, and our favorite, the Robber of the Rich.
My bad. I actually saw the mulligan option for Nassif that said you will return 2 cards. He only mulliganed once.
Okay, so mulligan is 6. Here's Robber of the Rich, and, well, one way you can make sure that you get to rob the rich is by mulliganing, so it's going to work here. And finds Expansion Explosion. This is the card that was a big factor in an earlier game in our match. And there's another one now for Nassif. It's also 1 win condition for Autumn. Autumn still has yet to be able to find anything to really go over the top. Developing their mana, great. Gaining a little bit of life, okay. But we're gonna need to see something to help propel this draw forward. It can't just be cast Explosion down the line in 3, 4, 5 turns from now.
Mm-hmm. And there is the Mystical Dispute that Nassif does have access to here, which can stifle Autumn's development. It looks like he's seriously considering it, but Nassif seriously considers just about everything.
You ever gone out to dinner with him? He cracks that menu open, and it's like, oh man. Do you need a little more time with that? Yeah, he does. He definitely does.
Could you come back in a little while?
We of course love to tease Nassif, but he legitimately is one of the best players we've ever had, style or not. Okay, Teferi's back up to 3 loyalty, and there's Cavalier of Flame.
Yeah, this could just be hard cast Cavalier.
Just a good old-fashioned. And there's an opt. Still, what's wrong with just running out the Cavalier here? And that's exactly what Nassif says. Slams it on the battlefield. It's going to resolve. And Nassif's just ahead. It's just that simple. He's just ahead on board, and he says, you figure it out, Autumn. You have to do something against what I've put on the battlefield. And this could be very difficult.
And crucially, Cavalier Flame, as we've seen in previous games, is quite difficult for Autumn's deck to remove. There are copies of Storm's Wrath. It's got 5 toughness. There's Fry. Sorry, it's not a white or blue creature. There's essentially Aether Gust that can get off the board for anything less than just a massive amount of mana.
Mm-hmm. And even then, it's only temporary. Also, more bad news for Autumn. Looking over at Nassif, trigger on the stack from the Cavalier, 2 cards in hand. And
I'll
Nassif
keep.
said, I'll just keep them both, thank you very much. That is not what you want to see if you're sitting in Autumn's seat. So here we go, Explosion for 2.
That's what you get for stealing my card.
And it's Brazen Borrower, Temple of Abandon, still just none of the big hitters. We really need to see a Hydroid Crisis or something in the next few turns, because now we're going to see just hardcast Brazen Borrower, give it haste, and bash. This is a lot of damage.
And this is Fires without Fires.
Without
putting
Fires.
on enough pressure. Another Mystical Dispute locked out by Teferi.
Is this over?
I mean, Brazen Borrower can bounce the Cavalier.
And then block the other Brazen Borrower? But that all has to happen now.
Yeah, it has to happen right now because of that Teferi.
Oh, this is so awkward for Autumn. And it looks like the wheels may be coming off. Gabriel Nassif perhaps a turn away from advancing, eliminating Autumn Burchett. Truly a back against the wall scenario here, as massive pressure on board from Cavalier of Flame, Brazen Borrower, and Teferi really throwing a wrench in the works, making life extremely difficult for Autumn.
And the only surviving play here is to get that Cavalier off the board. Got to get rid of that. Step 1. There it goes. And it can come back down, but there's no way to stop the Cavalier when it comes back down again. Krasis? Is
it too late?
I think it might be. And we saw Nassif just able to push through Krasis with the Cavalier Flame in previous games.
Where if Autumn decides to tap out.
Teferi's already on the board, right?
Yeah, this is super tough. Now, the Cavalier can come back down next turn, but regardless of draw steps for Nassif, will not be able to start attacking. And I tell you what, if you're in a situation where Autumn has to put Hydroid Crisis on the bottom of their library, what else could there possibly be, right? Autumn's going to keep Hydroid Crisis past the turn back. It's an island off the top of the library. Nassif, you can see him perk up in his chair a bit. I think he knows that this one's just about done. There's Teferi Time Raveler to -3 just to send the Brazen Borrower back into hand, get in for 3.
Oh, there's an explosion.
And there's an
There's just the
explosion
explosion
because
off
of the
of the
Brazen
robber.
Borrower, and that is going to be game for Gabriel Nassif. He has exactly enough mana to explosion for 2.
Going through the motions of it here, but that is the writing on the wall.
This is going to be the end of the road for Autumn Burchett. A fantastic run for them. Tough to see, but it is, in fact, Gabriel Nassif, the Hall of Famer, advancing in a tough 3-match wins here to get the job done for Nassif, and he is through.
And that's what happens when I say Robber the Rich, not that impactful. It's just like, oh, I just steal a lethal explosion. A bunch of turns after it's died, still just floating around there, and Brazen Bar was like, you know what? I'll take that.
And by the way, I think you see a lot of the emotion coming out here from both players, the true disappointment on the face of Autumn, but also Nassif, you and I have known him for a very long time. He is really going to be feeling for Autumn here.